Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, since the equinox, much of the country has really seen far below normal temperatures, and anytime there's been a warm-up, it's often been accompanied by either severe weather or a lot of rainfall. About the only place across the country that's seen a warm, beginning of spring here has been Southern California to Texas. So a big question we're going to ask is this going to continue, and how much longer is it going to continue? Because there's a lot of folks across the country that normally look for wide-open planting time period right now that are not finding it. On the precipitation side of things, we've been very wet in the northern plains. We've been very wet around the Great Lakes in through the Midwest. But each one of these systems that keeps ejecting farther and farther to the north leaves a pretty sizable dry slot that's come into this area. That includes parts of Nebraska and South Dakota, western Kansas, getting all the way down here into southern Texas, where we're continuing to see drought issues. Now, as of late, there's been better flow coming into northern California and Oregon and Washington, which is why that area is showing up on the wetter side of things. But again, one of the questions we're going to ask here is, how does this progress forward? What is it going to look like for the rest of April and the beginning of May? And when are those planting windows going to be opening up for some folks? Just take note here that this part of the Eastern Corn Belt getting over to the Carolinas, or at least North Carolina, has been, in Virginia, has seen some drier weather, although we had a system roll through here today that just brought a lot of precipitation to this area. So another thing I want to talk about here, and I'm trying to figure out a better way to show this to you, is that since the start of the year, we can identify a large quadrant, primarily in through this region, that has seen much above average wind speeds. It's probably extended much further than that down into Texas. In fact, we can probably expand it quite a bit into that area. But it's just been one of those years where we have had a lot of momentum in the flow of the jet stream, which is then translated at times into much stronger wind field. And it's come off the mountains in a big way. So a lot of Montana specifically, and getting into the plains, I've seen some extremely strong winds. I'm working on a better way of showing you that. But since I was talking about that jet stream momentum, let's go back and take a look at what's been going on here. We've had at times these pulses, see them in through here, where the jet stream level winds in the mid-latitudes have really just come in screaming, whereas to the south of that, getting down into the subtropics around 30 degrees north, we've had these powerful subtropical highs. So on one side, you're getting strong easterlies. That's keeping the La Niña going, and on the other side, strong westerlies. And in the middle, things have been quite calm. Now, when we think about what that means in terms of La Niña, I just did a quick analysis and put this in my morning report, but let's review it again here. Through this point in April, unlike what we had thought back in January and February, the La Niña did not fade. We were seeing in January the warming up of the temperatures, but they've since stabilized and stayed down here below that threshold. And with the stronger trade winds we've seen as of late, it's kept the MJO out of the Pacific Ocean. It's stayed more either in the Indian Ocean or here in phases 3, 4, and 5. That's been a consequence. And even lately, after seeing this large peak in March of the ocean temperatures just off of the west coast of South America, they've since come back down again. And what I'm trying to do here is show you that there's evidence that this La Niña is going to continue, and it's going to continue to be an issue through spring and summer, and may not fully fade, if it does fade at all, in 2022. So that's one of our biggest concerns right now moving forward. Now, during this same time period, one of the indexes we like to look at, and we talked about this on Thursday, is the Southern Oscillation Index. I'm just going to show you where it currently is. Remember, it's got to be above a value of 7. And what we're doing here is we're looking at a pressure difference between Tahiti in the Central Pacific and Darwin in North Australia. And what we've seen here is that the values have been up here in the teens, fell back down in late March, early April, but has since risen. And we right now are seeing the effect of this in the stronger trade wind pattern, and that ultimately governs a lot of other things flowing through the Pacific Ocean and its atmosphere. So this is what we need to talk about right now. So when we look back at what happens in April, when we have the Southern Oscillation Index compared against the winds at the jet stream level, we should expect to see a high momentum piece of the jet stream here, much lower momentum in the subtropics, and then again down here over the equator. So see this right here? That's what happens when the Southern Oscillation Index builds when we have a spring La Niña. And sure enough, when we look back at the month of April, we've seen it right there. Now, there's an issue with the way that these winds are coming into the northwest. They're hitting coastal Oregon and Washington and Northern California. That's great. But they hit the mountains almost perpendicularly. And that therefore we get this expansion of the rain shadow. Can you see it here? Over the last couple of weeks, we've really seen very dry air stay in place. And systems coming off that strong jet stream flow are ejecting north, not digging down into the Four Corners states. And we've certainly not seen any sense of a subtropical jet come in. So what this means is all the severe weather picks up east. We then have all of these systems gathering somewhere into Manitoba, Quebec, Ontario. I got those out of order. Ontario into Quebec, through the Great Lakes into New England. And that's where things have been very wet. So we would say that right now the base state of the atmosphere is behaving very much like a strengthening La Niña as we go into the month of April. Now we can also look at this another way. We say, well, what about April into May? When we correlate a positive Southern Oscillation Index against historical precipitation in April and May, the blues represent where there's a negative correlation or when things are dry, whereas the red colors represent where things are wet, all right? So what we tend to see is from the Great Basin into the southern plains, but notice I should expand this a bit more. It's kind of up into this area. That's the region we tend to stay drier. We tend to stay active with systems here in Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota. And then the whole of the east has a positive correlation with this, as does parts of the Pacific Northwest. Now, if that's the correlation, and I'm showing you that right now we have a strengthening Southern Oscillation Index, I don't think it'll surprise anybody when I give you the newest update from the European model. Came out this afternoon looking at the month of May. You see where we stay wetter. You see where the precipitation pattern will likely stay near normal, but we're drier throughout the plains, we're drier through the Great Basin, and despite better moisture coming into the Pacific Northwest now, it would suggest that going into May, which is really the beginning of the dry season for the Northwest, could be a little drier than normal. This is what I'm most concerned about. How much of this continues to miss out, especially in Nebraska, which is having one of its driest starts to any year on record, and you've seen the issues of the drought down in the Panhandle and western Kansas. How much longer does this last, and when do we start to see windows opening up in the east? We need to talk about that, and we're going to make a point of understanding that here in this video. So current drought situation, this was updated last Thursday, but still we have about 2/3 of the country in some form of drought. And there will be some improvement in coastal Oregon, Northern California, and through this area. And of course right in through here as snow melts. Because in that snow, there's 1 to 2 inches of liquid that's still going to come out of that. But the question is, what are we doing in this area? And is that going to change at all as we go into the month of April? Now, some of the new long-range data that's been released continue to suggest out from May into June and July that this La Niña continues, and there still remains colder water here. And what I'd like to do is show you some new long-range forecast data and kind of put this into context, because it would appear that all the long-range forecast data, as we've been discussing for the last 3 weeks, is still very much hung up on what the impact of this La Niña is going to be. So we know that if we keep the cooler water out there in the Central Pacific and we go through the months of May, June, and July, everywhere that you see the warmer colors here, this is a correlation against drier conditions. I know that seems flipped from what I just showed you. It is, because the ocean temperatures are cold. Therefore, when you would see the warmer colors, that means it would be wetter when there's an El Nino, drier when there's a La Niña. Do you see that? So we run this risk going later into the summer of drier conditions where they already are, but there's also a risk in through here of seeing drier conditions. And that's what we've seen so many of these long-range forecasts showing. So I'd like to just introduce you to the newest one that was released over the weekend. There's a group at Columbia University, the IRI, so the International Research Institute for Climate Society. They do a sub-seasonal to seasonal forecast. And this is their latest update. Now let's go back and look at May, June, and July. So this is for the whole globe. A couple of important points to think about. Let's start in Europe. Notice that around the Black Sea, getting here over into like Kazakhstan, Russia, these places, there is a forecast here for drier conditions. That's common with La Niña. Whereas Indonesia and Australia, as they go through fall into winter, tend to be quite wet. We're going to talk about South America at the end, but if we just zoom in here on North America, you can notice that the models are still aggressive with keeping the drought in the plains, but then developing it back west. Now, when you consider this forecast, remember that nearly everything we're discussing is really fully built on ocean temperature patterns. That's really the only variable. We talked a lot about this lately that's statistically correlated with this, which is why we're keeping such a close eye on what these ocean temperatures are going to be doing. Let's go back and find them real quick here. There we go. We need to see if these water temperatures start to moderate. And I put that in Thursday's video and gave you links for that so we can watch it together. Now, when we come back to this IRI multi-model forecast, I'm going to show you the temperature side of this. There will be a point, probably not until we get through the first week and a half of May, that we're going to break over warm. It will break. The pattern will start to break. But the models are suggesting that from southern Texas through the plains, getting back into the mountains, that's where we have our highest probability of being above average in terms of temperatures. Let's add to this some of NOAA's analysis, and this is going to be updated again very soon. So what we're going to look at first is May, June, and July. This is their probability of exceedance. So probability of being drier than normal in these colors, wetter than normal in these. So it's again the story about the tighter windows east, where the drought is, we expect it to expand and push back into the northwest. As we then go from May, June, July into June, July, August, that's seen here, and then July, August, September, you continue to see this region showing up with risk of summer drought. And again, all of this is built on those ocean temperature patterns. So we need to watch those most carefully as we go forward. So I just wanted to add some new information in here to our long-range updates. We're going to continue to do this in every video. Now, it's interesting, as we were watching some satellite imagery over the weekend, can I just take you back here? This was just kind of funny. We saw that in the day on Sunday. Can you see it with me? This is, a water vapor image. The very active North Pacific jet produced a couple of deep lows here with a big dry swath. See it? That kind of went right over the top of Hawaii. But what I saw was like a face. Can you all see that face? Well, if I go to the end of this animation, what would I guess would be the left eye has a lot of upper level divergence in it, and there's good jet stream flow here, and it is what delivered over the weekend. Sorry, we lost some data there, but it's what's been delivering this next trough into the west. And let's see what this has been doing, because I compared April 7th here to April 17th, and that high momentum jet stream flow, look at this as it goes back and forth, has added snowpack to the Sierra Nevada, the Klamath Mountains, and you can't see, but it's also in Oregon as well. Now, in the last 72 hours, we put down more snow in this area, including more snow that's hit the northern plains, and on Easter Sunday, we brought snow into parts of the Midwest, parts of Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And a lot of folks, I think that was pretty off-putting, normally thinking that we are getting things going at this point. So, come back to our questions. When do we break away from this, and when do things start to shift around? First, I would like to just bring up to speed in California. We have seen improvement in the snowpack. We're now above 20% compared to the normal for this date, which is good, but we would like to see just a bit more moisture going forward. Good thing is the atmosphere is going to be providing that. And you say, why? Well, let's just look at Lake Shasta and Lake Oroville. Those are two of the biggest reservoirs in Northern California. Shasta's at 39% full pool, Oroville's at 50%. So we need this moisture that's coming in right now on this. Now listen carefully, because I think this is most critical going forward. We've seen the strong, open, zonal flow in the jet stream for a while now. No major blocks. If we're going to slow this pattern down so that we can plant a crop, we've got to stop this. Now, I'm saying the atmosphere needs to stop this. There needs to be some sense of a block, probably over Alaska to the Gulf of Alaska, to break this down. But as it moves forward, it's kind of the love-hate relationship we have with it. It is helping some drought regions. And right now, the thing I'm watching most carefully is this little wave right here. That wave right there is what's left of a typhoon. And we're going to talk about that in a few seconds, okay? Because it's going to eventually make a mess in the midsection of the country later this week. Now, I'm recording this almost at 7 o'clock, so let's just take a look at some of the things we're watching. This is all freeze warning in through this area, frost advisory to the south of it. We have a system that's pulling into New England. It's prompted winter storm warnings here. We'll take a look at the snowfall in a second. But red flag warnings on the backside, high wind warnings again in Montana, so things are still remaining quite active. Let's check in with the 18Z NAM to see how this progresses through this evening and into tomorrow. So the upper level low is spinning over parts of the Great Lakes into tonight, and you can see the cold air on the backside of that bringing those snow showers into the eastern Corn Belt and eastern Great Lakes up into Ontario and Quebec. But in the overnight hours, there could be some heavy snow, wet snow, Pennsylvania, New York, with rains along the coast. And that system just slowly curls up into New England as we get into tomorrow and tomorrow night. So this is out to 7 p.m. on Tuesday. I'm going to show you what happened in the west. By late tonight, you see this front coming through here. And what's happening is it's going to break over the Rocky Mountains in British Columbia and Alberta, and emerge as a system. It's just off the map here, right up here in tomorrow afternoon in parts of Saskatchewan. Now it's got a front out ahead of it down here. And what you're going to see is along that front, showers and storms from this part of the Red River Valley at the south, getting over toward Kansas City. And then as we go through the day on Tuesday, that front slides through, bringing more snow to the Red River Valley of the north. And then Wednesday, rain again, scattered rain throughout the Corn Belt, a place that's not been able to get a break either from the cold weather or from the rain. So that's through Thursday. That system rolls through. Behind it, the next one's coming in here. We better take a look at what's going on there. First, we're going to switch models here, of course, and go over to the GFS versus European analysis. What's interesting, both models are right now performing equally similar, but they've broken away, especially the European was performing really well. We've kind of stepped down a bit. And the GFS has been a bit more wild in its performance, but they're both right now sitting somewhere in this vicinity. What we're watching was this. Let me take you back to the 15th. This was the Typhoon we were keeping an eye on. As I play this forward, you see that Typhoon has been moving north. See it here? This is what things look like on the night of the 15th, getting into the 16th. And now what's happened here into the 17th and 18th, it's been pulled into the trough that's sitting over the Aleutian Islands. And that is the system we're watching very carefully. Now, it's sitting right in through here. This is the GFS European, and I love it. The models are in lockstep with what it's going to do with it. So first trough exits by Wednesday into New England, taking the colder air with it. Then this in the European, this in the GFS, coming around the back side of this trough is what was left of that Typhoon. And it's going to dip into the west here. Both models eject this as a negatively tilted trough. It's going to go straight over the same spot that previous system did a week ago this weekend, and it's going to race quickly here. Now that is pretty good model agreement all the way out 150 hours. That's out to Sunday. The problem is after this, both models dip a trough toward the end of the month into the eastern half of the country. I'll show you what that does to temperatures in a few moments. Okay, now you've seen the upper level pattern. Let me show you both models together. We're going to pick this up on Wednesday when that system is rolling through parts of Manitoba, out of Saskatchewan into Manitoba. Both models have it. Now, that's bringing in the wet weather through the midsection of the country. That front falls apart, though, as it approaches the east. Higher pressure dominates the southeast. So after today's rain here in like the Carolinas, we got some drier weather that's coming up. Now, at this particular point on Friday, this right here is in the middle of that deeper trough. It then comes into the west. Look at this. Brings in the moisture into parts of the west where we desperately need it. And once again, out ahead of it on the warm front, there is precipitation in Iowa and Illinois. And that's, again, a place we've not been able to break over because it's going to be warm at this point, but just wet is the issue. So as we go through Friday, watch the low emerge. Both models have the low coming into parts of Nebraska and South Dakota. This is going to be Saturday morning. And look at the blue on the backside. That's a lot of snow. The main issue here is look at the size of this dry slot. It comes in right into those same places that have missed out. So this system curls up. We do need to be discussing here Friday, Saturday, into Sunday where the severe weather is going to be to the south. We're going to keep an eye on that all week. I'll keep you up to date in my morning reports. But this is, again, a situation that opens up the Gulf, brings in the unstable air. We could get severe weather pretty far to the north in this situation, or severe weather here. And then as we go into the weekend, what I'm most concerned about late weekend and Monday is as this system, remember, it comes in like this and eventually ends up in parts of Ontario. If it leaves a front here, because high pressure builds in behind it, high pressure's here, so the flow comes around like that. That's not a lot to move this front. Passes right over the same places that have been quite wet going into early next week. So when we put it together, look at how well the models align. This is the next 7 days forecast precipitation anomalies from the GFS. So you can see the systems coming in, see the much wetter weather here. A lot of this is snow. You can see the size of the dry slot and then the stalled out boundary plus the storms. So notice who's drier on either side of that front. Watch this. European, almost identical. This is good. Very good model agreement here on what we're seeing out of this next system. Now beyond that, we got to talk snow, because as that system comes through, the probability of getting over 6 inches hammers the same location right here that just saw 2 to 3 feet of snow, right? This was up to almost 36 inches of snow in parts of North Dakota. And don't forget, the system going through right now still has the potential to put down snow in parts of Pennsylvania, in New York. So we're going to be adding more snow to this particular area as this system goes through. Now what happens after that? Well, that trough pulling through here dives east. So the jet stream flow is doing something like this by the end of April. So we're colder here. There's a lot of upper level convergence here. So even though you start to see that the models are giving you a drier look in this area, whoops, let's try this one. A drier look in this area for week 2 that would be out there at the beginning of May, we're going to have cold air in place, and we need to talk about that colder air. So frost potential over the next 7 days, shown in gray. All right, that's our next 7 days. But as we watch these temperatures, compare them to normal, this is Monday's highs. We've already seen these. There's Tuesday. Look at the warmth trying to come back in, but the cold here across the eastern half of the country. Well, Wednesday, southern plains start to warm up. Warm sector opens on Thursday, really wide on Friday. But here it is. That's the next system coming out. The west is cold. That system dips down on Saturday into Sunday. This is where we're going to put down the snow. The warmth moves east. Now that gets you out to the 24th. NOAA released this today. They're concerned after the 24th at this region seeing a moderate risk of having much below average temperatures. And I've been looking out there at that time period, and I'm concerned that some of the models are now showing out to the end of the month that the 50-degree isotherm in 4-inch soil temperatures is right here. So that means if we're waiting to plant corn on that 50-degree isotherm to get there, unfortunately, this means the end of April is going to shut us down into this area. So once we look out there, the day 5 through 10, the warm air is exiting, the colder air is back in place, and this is my concern. Day 10 through 15, that gets us out to the beginning of May. We now see the colder risks, the colder air that's coming in. Now, how far to the south do we get a frost? You know, we could be talking about this area seeing a frost. I don't know about much farther south than that, but that's what I'll be watching out for this late April, early May timeframe. So when does it break over? When do we finally break this? I told you to watch the Gulf of Alaska and Alaska for a block, but the models suggest that possibly the first week of May continues on its colder bias here, which may mean we have to get past that first full week of May before we start to see a significant warm-up. When that happens, I imagine you're going to see some of the fastest planting, if the precipitation holds off, some of the fastest planting we've seen in a long time. Think May 2018. I want to finish with a quick update on South America. Whoops, let's get here. In South America, we've seen the drought which hit back in March, which hit about 25% of the Safrinha crop. It's slowly begun to expand into Mato Grosso and actually all the way over here to Rondônia. That means more of the Safrinha crop from mid-March to mid-April has seen drought stress. Well, with the MJO collapsing due to the strengthening of the La Niña, we're now looking at this precipitation pattern through May 3rd. It's gone over much drier, and there'll be places right in through here where we're not expecting any rainfall out of this. So what this means is that the Safrinha crop is coming under some late season stress on moisture. And remember the monsoon, we shared this in the videos last week, the monsoon in May slows down dramatically. That's the end of it. So we've seen now this very slow finish to the monsoon season in terms of precipitation, and the strengthening La Niña, it's pushing the MJO back into the Indian Ocean, is suppressing it further. So I'm going to watch this all very carefully and report back to you again on Thursday. Thanks for the extra time tonight. I had to rerun all my European model runs because we were missing some data, but we got it all fixed, and you saw the latest tonight. So I appreciate your attention. Thank you.